Now we're going to talk about posing groups, which is not really probably as easy as it seems. There's actually several things to keep in mind. And the rules that I'm going to give you, or the guidelines, are going to be applicable whether you're photographing families or friends or organizations. And so these are some things that I want you to keep in your mind as you're posing that will improve or give you a better quality photograph. So let's start and build those foundations of things that you do want and don't want out of a group photo. All right, so the first consideration is that you want balance and proportion. If you're looking at how you've posed your group and it looks like there's a bunch of people or a lot more attention being drawn to one side of the group than the other, you probably have to shift things. Because in a group, you want to be able to show unity. You want to show that they're a group. So if it's uneven, it's not going to be successful. So related to that next point is that you want to show unity. If everybody is just standing like 3 feet apart, arms crossed, not interacting, it doesn't look like they have anything to do with one another. So you want some form of unity, which could be an overlap in shoulders, perhaps. Or it could be for a family, a hand on the shoulder. Or for friends, arms around the side. It's things like that. So when you have the group, you want everything to be balanced and proportionate, but you want it to look like a group. You don't want a lot of negative space between individuals. There needs to be something that carries you through that composition. Now, speaking of composition, something else that you want is you want to build in triangles. For the best small group shots, the entire composition is built on the idea of triangles. You don't want everybody's heads all lined up in a row. Let's say you're photographing 5 people and they're all approximately the same height and you just line them up in a row. It's so stagnant, it has no movement, it's not dynamic. But if you look at some of the best photos of groups, you see so many different layers and so many different levels. So if any of you have seen Vanity Fair or Vogue, when they have the really large group shots of the celebrities and they kind of fold out and you can see them, every single person is posed in their own way and at a different level, because what that does is it encourages your eye to travel throughout that entire composition. If they're all lined up in a row, it looks more like they're getting ready to get their mug shots taken. And so it's not really giving you a beautiful composition. So you want your balance and proportion, you want them to look unified as a group, but you also want triangles and shapes. Now, when you're photographing a really big group, let's say that it's for a graduation photo for an entire class or a whole corporation, some of these rules don't necessarily apply. In those instances, sure, it might be okay to have people's heads lined up as long as there's some stacking, different layers, but one long line isn't going to work. But I'm thinking for small groups primarily, that's when you can really shine. That's when your posing strength is going to show. Different layers, different triangles, unity, overlap, but you don't want anything to be too symmetrical. So I typically avoid everybody doing the exact same pose. It doesn't look genuine, it doesn't look comfortable, and it doesn't really move your eye throughout the frame. So these are just some of the elements that I'm thinking for really great group poses. So what I want to do is I want to take you through, show you some of the bad things that you commonly see and how to work around them, how to move past that for better poses. So I'm going to start. Can I have you 3 ladies first, real quick? Okay, so if you were posing because I just raised the camera and you are best friends, usually you probably kind of put your arms around each other. So can you guys do that? Okay. So, but you absolutely see this. So that's perfect. Okay. So what I see is on the far left-hand side, because her friend to her left is a little shorter. I'm sorry. She puts her arm around and does this. Anytime you're having people put their arms around one another, it does 2 pretty terrible things. What it does is it's forcing their hips towards camera. They're being forced straight on, which is where they look their widest. So that's not going to be flattering. If you look, pretty much all of them are straight on. It's opening them up, but also you're reaching up to someone that's taller, which would raise your shoulder, and you're hunching down to someone that's shorter, and it's not going to be flattering. So when I pose groups, I'm making sure that everybody is posed individually, but still overlapping in some way. So let's say that this is a group of college friends, college best friends, and I want to do like a cool kind of fashion-y pose for them. I want to do something a little different. Could I have an apple box? What I want to do is I want to get their heads off of the same level, and I don't want to wrap arms around in any way. So let me build in one by one. So let's see. Could you do me a favor? Can you come up to this box, and you looked comfortable with you can stand behind, and put your hand on your hip the way that you were. You looked comfortable. Okay, I already saw it. If I see someone posing well on their own, I'll work with it. So she puts her hand on her hip, hips back, push your hips away from me, and like your butt that way. Okay, good. Yeah, you're doing it. Perfect. All right, so she's just doing a normal women's pose. Cool. All right, so then I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you stand next to her, and I'm going to have you, in this instance, let's see. How about you pose like this? You can put one leg out to the side. She's looking cool. Okay, and a little bit further over. All right, so I'm giving each one of them, and turn your foot out for me. Great, so she's got her own pose. The reason I posed her like this is because she's very, very, very slender, although you are too. This is like the most slender group ever. But if I turn her too far to the side, she's gonna look really small, and she'll kind of be diminished in the group. So I have her turning to the side so she'll take up equal proportion. I don't want it to be uneven, like I said, unbalanced. So I wanna make sure there's visual balance in the frame. Now, again, I said I wanted different levels, and so I brought out an apple box. You could have an apple box or a stool, or you could sit someone on the ground or have them kneel. And so I'm gonna have you sit here. Let's take a look. And I'm going to have, can you put your arm on her shoulder? Good. I'm gonna have you turn that way, to your left, other way. There you go. And looks great. Put your hand on your hip. Perfect. All right, so here's some of the things I'm thinking is, as I look at this, I've got some triangles going on, and I want there to be some interaction. If they're all just standing there not touching each other, it doesn't look like a group shot. So that's why I have her with her hand on her shoulder. I may have you just come up a little closer. Great. And I'm going to turn your hips towards camera a little bit more. Perfect. And so everybody's got their own pose, but they're all overlapping. Either she's not really overlapping her shoulders, but at least she's touching her arm. That's a point of unity. And she's not touching her arm, but she's overlapping in her shoulders and her head. So they hold together as a group, and I'm making sure that everyone looks good, because I find a lot of times what ends up happening is they just say, okay, everyone sit down, and then there's so many people you're not paying attention to how it's flattering the form. So that looks great, and I want you to bring your arm behind her back a little bit. Yeah, good. And just scoot behind her a tiny bit more. I'm looking for too much negative space. That looks good. So let me take that photo. Okay, you guys look great. Perfect, and 1, 2, 3, and you're good. You're all smiling, so that's good. You decided on what the mood was. You're best friends, perfect. And wiggle your front finger. Your pinky's all crazy on that one. Yeah, good. Good. Okay, cool. All right, so this would be for photographing friends. And I'm stacking in layers, but here's how I think of it. So, okay, as friends, this is a good pose. Maybe as family, I might use a little bit different body language. Maybe I'd move them closer together, wrap in a little bit more. Or if I added a brother of one of these women to the frame, his body language would be different than if I added one of their husbands to the frame. So it's not quite as simple as just pose everyone differently. You have to think of context. Is this family? Is this friends? Is this business? But those general rules still stay the same. All right, so let me think about, I'm gonna add in a couple other people. And so I said the rules that you want some symmetry, and you also want to stack in triangles. So if I look, here's what I have. 1, 2, 3. I've got triangles there. So where are some other places that I could add another person? All right, well, I could add somebody maybe over here as another head, or someone sitting on the floor right here, but I want to make sure it's not too asymmetrical. So if I added someone over here, I might have her turn out a little bit so that there's a little bit more attention to the composition this direction. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to build in as if there was let's bring in a sibling. You want to be a sibling? Okay, so I'm going to switch you out for a second. Okay. Okay, so they're all siblings, right? They look like it. Perfect. So I'm gonna pose you behind a little bit, and just put your hand in your front pocket, and you can drop your back arm. Great. So I still think that this looks a little more friends because they're kind of posing individually. Can you do me a favor? Can you turn towards him and just put your arm on his shoulder? Okay, so for me, that's a little bit more like, okay, this is maybe we're related, he's my friend. However, we're gonna go weird now. That's friend, let's change that, or that's a sibling, it's brother, sister. Let's go to now they're married. Right, like, it's true though. So now what I want you to do is I want you to wrap your arm around him and get even closer. And you're gonna actually maybe wrap your arms around here.
Oh, yeah.
Great, yeah, perfect. So it just communicates something different, and maybe this, well, you know, this could be a daughter or maybe a sister, but yeah, do two are sisters, perfect. Okay. So if you're getting the concept, I'm still including everybody, and I'm stacking, and I'm going for triangles, and I want everyone to have their own pose, but body language varies based on if this is family, friends, corporate, etc. So you guys all look good. I'll keep you in, let's go back to brother-sister mode. Okay, all right, excellent. So let's add someone else in here. I'm going to actually, Caitlin, will you grab your other box? Let me just see. So I can add another person in, and I'm thinking I'm gonna add Caitlin in over here. Good. Perfect. So when I add Caitlin in over on this side of the composition, what I'm looking for is I don't want their heads to be exactly lined up, and I want to make sure I have triangles. But something that we will talk about a little bit is going to be the depth of your photo. I don't want everybody to have a ton of space between them, so I'm going to move you up a little bit. You're just going to step up closer to her just a tiny bit, and I'm going to scoot you towards the edge of your box. Great. Perfect. And you're going to put your hand on your knee and put that hand on your hip. Or, yeah, without hurting her, perfect. Okay, so this I could do a group shot. And then I would say, all right, so I got my triangles, my different levels. I can add in another person front and center, because that would be another triangle, triangle, triangle. So can I have you come sit front and center? Perfect, and you can just sit sideways for me. And put your back knee up. Great, and put your hand on, perfect. So, 1, 2, 3, triangle, and then a triangle and a triangle. So I'm building in that composition. So this to me is looking like friends, but if somebody is a sibling, I might make a little bit different change to the body language, or maybe this is your sister. So I might put your hand like on her arm or on her shoulder, just unifying. But everybody is overlapping. Nobody is standing, for example. Can I borrow you? Mm-hmm. Can you scoot your apple box this way? Ooh, I'm not that, well, you're not that exiled. Maybe like there. Okay. If I pull her too far to the side and she's not overlapping with anyone in any way, it'll look like she doesn't belong in the group. So I want her to at least overlap a shoulder with an arm or reach over and touch someone's shoulder. It's keeping the unity there. So I will scoot you back a little. You're not that exiled. Okay, so let's talk about a couple other things that you could do incorrectly. Can I have both of you gentlemen for a moment? I'm just going to have both of you stand over here, okay? And both of you cross your arms. Okay. So yeah, you're just being too cool. So when I look at this frame, what ends up happening is I've got the triangles and everything over here, and then they kind of trail off to the side. So I've lost my balance. I've lost the overall composition I was going for. So I would have to do something like, can I bring you over here? Okay, now you two are married. Okay, you're married to her.
Married?
Yeah, he's like, all right. You don't know each other, right?
No.
Yeah, see, they don't know each other. He's totally into it. Okay, excellent. Great. So I could do something like that, and you can put your arm back around. Yep, there you go. Excellent. Okay, so at least I still have my triangles, and it's a little more balanced. I will bring you in just a bit. And okay, so related to that, as I have many people in the frame, I'm going to mess up my pose for a second. Will all of the guys cross their arms? Okay. It's okay to have similar poses, but when you see it a lot, it starts to look like you forced the pose a lot. Like you just said, you know, stand there and everyone's bored. They all cross their arms. You basically said, all right, guys, go out there, cross your arms, just stand there. It doesn't look like there's as much thought to it. So I do try to pose people individually. And specifically for guys, make sure that you tell them where to pose their hands. I've talked about posing men. A lot of times in groups, if you don't tell them where to pose their hands, they stand like this, and then it looks like they're blocking them. So I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, and although I see so many wedding photos where people are just standing like that. So I at least pose hands, and generally for guys, I usually either pose with just their thumb in their jean pocket or their whole hand in, just leaning a little towards camera, or crossing the arms is okay as long as it looks comfortable. Okay, so you can go back to the poses you were in. Great. So if I want this to be symmetrical and I want this to be balanced, I could figure out another way. I could maybe have him kneel. Would you kneel on one knee there? Okay. Exactly. Perfect.
Other way?
No, it's whatever you're comfortable with. It doesn't matter. Okay. Good. So again, triangles and everything, and now I could add another face. Maybe, would you come be married to him? Great. So you're going to look married and be all lovey to him. Okay. Okay, cool. And I think that I need you to overlap just a little bit more. And you might need to like step over his leg. Perfect. Great. Oh, you're okay where you are, right there. And kick your hips back. That way, perfect. And turn your shoulders towards me just a little. Great. So I'm making sure that everybody's unified. So I look at that and I think that that's a pretty decent group pose. I approve, and a very attractive people. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to take a shot of you guys there. Perfect. All right, ready? 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 3. Great. Perfect. I wanted to take a moment to look at the type of pose that I think people get into naturally. Like if you just told a group of people, hey, everybody bunch up, why don't you all pose, and then they give you something like this. So I want to break down what doesn't work, how I can fix it, what I'm analyzing in my head. All right, so we're going to go through all of the mistakes I see here. First of all, I see a lot of heads lined up. I got these girls perfectly in a row, those guys perfectly in a row. So that doesn't work. It's so linear. There's no movement in it. Okay, the next problem I see. Okay, these dudes in the back. The guys always do that. They wrap their arms around each other, all intertwined, and it hunches up their shoulders, especially when you're photographing men in suits. I mean, it just absolutely destroys the jackets. It looks terrible. So I know that I'm gonna have to fix. All right, so then the next thing I said was you want there to be balance in the composition, balance in the group. And so, okay, at least over here, there's a little bit of balance, but then you've got these two ladies randomly off to the side. They don't look like they have anything to do with this group. Okay, let's go back to posing. Symmetry, these girls are posing all the same. That's pretty boring. There's not much movement there, so I know I want to change that. And then also, they're facing straight on towards camera with their knees, and that gives us the problem of posing we've talked about called foreshortening. So they're going to look like they have a little bit shorter legs. And then I noticed one other thing. The guys are pretty far back. They're several feet behind, and so they actually look pretty short. And if I happen to be shooting from a lower angle, I mean, you will barely see them at all, so they get minimized in the frame. So I'm just gonna go through and try to fix things. Okay, so guys, first of all, I'll have you just not hug so much. Sorry.
All right.
Okay, so you girls, I can do like a little bit of symmetry, but not that identical. Can you turn out for me? Perfect. And can you, let's see, you can put your hand on your knee. Let me move out of the way. Perfect. Okay. Now let's see. I'm gonna have you turn out. So at least like there's balance there. They can face outward, and you can put your hand on your hip, one hand on your knee. All right. So she starts to get lost. I'm gonna come back to you eventually. But I think that right now, what ends up happening, because they're all the same height or approximately, it makes such a straight line that I might have you sit or stand. So maybe I'll have you stand on this one. Okay, so I'm going to switch. Perfect. All right, so I'll bring you back in a minute. For you guys, step way up. Okay? And let's pretend this is some sort of family of, something like that. Can you put your hand on her back? Look like you like her just a little bit? Yeah, you can put your hands on her shoulders. Perfect. All right, let's see. Let's add in, I'm going to have you marry him now. Okay? So I'm going to have you wrap your arm around his arm. Perfect. And hips back. Great. Perfect. All right, so I've got still a pretty straight line of guys in the back there, so I'm probably going to want to change that. So let's mix that up. Can I put you in the middle? I'm going to have you switch. And I also, unless there's a reason, like it's a bridal party, I probably shouldn't have all the guys in one place, all the girls in the other. So that looks wonderful. I'm going to have, let's say, these two are married and this is your brother. Okay? So you're just going to put your hand real soft on his arm. Okay? Great. And then you can put your other hand on your hip. Perfect. Can I have, oh, I'm going to bring you in here. Okay? I'm going to have, and you guys want to just scoot out a little bit, make room for him? All right, let's sit comfortably. You can kind of lean forward on a leg. Yeah, I knew you were going to be cool about it. See, I already knew, I just knew you were going to do that. Perfect. Okay, great. So then I can figure out if you want to sit in the front or if you have a sibling, and so I'd figure out how they're all related. So let's say that you want to come sit in the front someplace, more or less. And let's see, so if you don't know each other, I probably wouldn't sit right between his legs, maybe just like a little bit. I mean, you could. I'm just saying. And then for composition's sake, make sure if a guy is facing straight on towards camera that I like how your arm is well placed and to obscure things. Maybe turn a little bit to the side. Pick a side, maybe turn that way just a little bit. Okay, cool. And so as I'm looking at this, this is where I would add someone else. I might add somebody here if I had another person in the group. And I could add somebody over here standing, like my height. This would be perfect in the group, and maybe I know her. Or I could sit, if I were joining this group, I could sit right around here. So I'm looking for symmetry, but not too symmetrical. I want balance. Everybody gets their own pose. I have different layers, and notice everybody's overlapping or interacting in some way. So those are your checklists for what to do when you're posing groups.